Almost 2 years ago, in May of 2019, this project was launched at Western Grower headquarters in Irvine with grower members, technology companies, manufacturers, and researchers. Today, the outcome of all of that work over almost 2 years is the launch of the Global Harvest Automation Initiative to help address the growing challenges related to food security and harvest labor. These are among the biggest challenges facing WGA members today. Every year, fields are prepped, seeds are planted, crops are irrigated, thinned, and weeded, and monitored for pests and foreign objects. And after all of that effort, some of these fields are unable to be harvested because there's no available harvest labor. At the same time, regulatory costs from overtime, wage changes, and heat rules are driving the cost of the available harvest labor up. Some of our larger growers estimate that labor costs will increase by up to 70% in the next 5 years. So both of these forces, unharvested crops and huge cost increases, are combining to make the need for harvest automation more urgent than ever. Today, we'll hear from a global set of Western grower partners about this initiative. We'll hear from ag-tech partners and startups from the UK, France, New Zealand, Australia, and Israel. We've developed and continue to develop global partnerships for two main reasons. First, this is a global problem that challenges growers everywhere. Second, there are a global set of solutions that are getting developed everywhere. Partnering with global organizations helps bring the world's farmers and innovators to the same table and is the best way for WGA to lead this global initiative. Dave Puglia, the president and CEO of WGA, will give his perspective today on why this initiative is such a big bet for WGA and our members. I don't want to steal Dave's thunder, but WGA is making a big public commitment to this initiative today. The Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission will give their perspectives on the importance of this initiative for their members, and will be signing an MOU with a 3-year commitment. Wilfred Alber from Roland Berger will give an analyst perspective on this initiative as it relates to other automation in other industries. Some good perspective for us. Then after a lunch break and some really good tacos, and we did test the tacos for you locally, you're welcome, we'll focus on one key component of the initiative, the technology stack. Trimble and Microsoft will provide some context for how this initiative creates opportunities for their companies to participate in solving the food security challenge for growers. We'll then have a technology panel discussion about how this initiative can impact the technology companies and how they can help support the initiative. This will be followed by a grower panel discussing the importance of the initiative from the grower's side, particularly specialty crop growers that are some of the largest growers and use a significant amount of harvest labor for their operations. Finally, we'll close out the day with presentations from Agritech New Zealand and some of the startups from the New Zealand region. Before we dive into the agenda, I want to give everyone a quick overview of the 4 key components of the initiative we're launching today. First, the technology stack. We'll cover this in more detail later in the afternoon session, but think of it this way. Currently, harvest startups build the entire technology stack themselves, from imaging to artificial intelligence, to interpreting the images and determining what's food and what's weeds, and what's ready to harvest versus what's not ready to harvest. To robot arms, to end effectors that actually harvest the crops, to tractors to move everything through the field. This is why, even with tens of millions of dollars in investment and years of development effort in startups for strawberry and other harvest, we are still harvesting a very low percentage of fruits and vegetables by robot. The technology stack will help startups integrate with industry-standard tractors, robot arms, sensors, and others to help commoditize up to 60 to 80% of the startup's technology stack. The implementation of the technology stack and systems integration resources that are equally important to help startups will be one of the key accelerators for the startups. We believe that this can save startups quarters to years of development time with proper implementation. The second big component is picking a cohort of startups to work with on this initiative. The cohort will be selected and will get extra time and investment from us to help accelerate their efforts. Grower and partner evaluations will be used to pick this cohort, and we'll work with them on systems integration, mentoring, and case studies to help maximize the impact of harvest automation. The systems integration piece is really key. This is not an if you build it, they will come. This is if you build it and help them, they will come. And we know that, and we're planning on that, and we're resourcing for that. The mentoring will also focus on economics that work for startups and growers, and on go-to-market strategies that leverage the channel partners such as equipment dealers and labor contractors. WGA plans on staying intimately involved with these startups and with their members to do both field trials and case studies. The case studies will be written and published by Western growers so that all of our members get the benefit of the case study. This is a big change from our current approach of introducing startups to farmers and then letting them handle the rest of the transaction themselves. Western growers is now going to stay involved because everyone realizes there's a lot of benefit to publishing those case studies and getting the leverage across multiple growers. The cohort will start with a small set of startups, probably 3 to 5 that we get good feedback on and can provide resources to support. As we get more feedback and identify more startups that are worth supporting, we will add more startups and provide them with both the systems integration, case study, and mentoring support from our members that they need and want. It's worth mentioning that AgTech is having a big impact on farm labor, and as we get more AgTech solutions into the fields, there will be a need for farm labor to evolve so that it's able to work effectively with the robots, understand how to improve them, and service them. If we look historically at thinning as an example, which has done well to get into the marketplace, thinning didn't remove the 25-person thinning crew when you implemented the thinning machine. Thinning actually changed that 25-person crew to a 3 to 5-person crew that's higher skilled, higher cost, and harder to find. And one of the things Western Growers is working on in conjunction with this AgTech push is to help build that next generation workforce that we're going to need to take care of and look after all the robots. The tech stack and the cohort are meant to provide the resources needed to help the startups get to scale. The last 2 components of the initiative are to help growers. The first component's the roadmap. The roadmap's going to help identify startups that are getting to scale by crop type and shows each individual startup's position relative to other startup positions for that crop. We will publish the first roadmap this summer, then update it quarterly as we get new startups and update the traction portion with progress for each of the startups. This visual representation of who and what startups are working with which crops is going to be really useful for farmers to understand who the players are that they want to work with on their crop type. And we think it's going to be a really useful tool for startups who will obviously want to be on that roadmap and in the right place. So it should help both groups. I'm a big fan of market maps, particularly Shauna Day's work to develop what I believe is the most comprehensive market map of agri-food tech startups. They're great for their intended purpose, identifying startups that are in each of the agri-food tech segments. The key difference with our roadmap is to not just lay out the startups that are doing the work, but to actually show on a relative basis which ones are further along and do it by crop type. Our focus will make us different and I think more useful to farmers for this context. Harvest Roadmap will be the first roadmap that Western Growers releases over the summer, and we plan to build other roadmaps, such as food safety or crop-specific roadmaps. Imagine a food safety roadmap for detect and fix that shows the relative traction performance of solutions that can identify and fix challenges like E. coli and Listeria at each point in the supply chain, from field to truck to production to the store or restaurant. Consider how useful it could be for a spinach grower to have one roadmap with all the innovation options related to labor, including thinning, planting, harvesting, and weeding. Each roadmap will provide the same benefit to the growers and help them identify the startups they should look at and which are in market and at which stage. So we're excited to roll the initial roadmap out this summer, and more are coming. The fourth and final component is impact. This helps the industry quantify the impact of the harvest automation startups. Capturing the industry-wide impact is going to be a little tricky. Farmers and startups look at the impact of automation differently. My conversations to date have confirmed that, and our conversations with members have definitely helped us understand where we want to start thinking about this. So we'll have an annual report, the initial one of which launches this year, on where the baseline is for harvest automation And each year we'll update on how are we doing. Let's hold ourselves accountable for making progress, and let's publicly state the progress that we're making. So those are the 4 key components of the Global Harvest Automation Initiative: a tech stack, a cohort of startups that are enabled with systems integration, mentoring, and case study support, a roadmap to identify the startups that are in market with traction, and an impact report that quantifies the annual impact of the aggregate set of harvest startup activity. All of this is supported by a global network that can help accelerate market entrance into multiple geographies for the startup cohort, and case studies that capture the actual benefits to the growers from field trials.